Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we will be reading 2 Samuel chapter 4. And when Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands were feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. And Saul's son had two men that were captains of bands. The name of one was Baanah, and the name of the other Rechab, the sons of Rimmon, a Beerothite of the children of Benjamin, for Beeroth also was reckoned to Benjamin. And the Beerothites fled to Gideam and were sojourners there until this day. And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. He was 5 years old when the tidings came of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And it came to pass, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. And the sons of Rimmon the Beerothites, and Rechab, and Baanah went and came about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth, who lay on a bed at noon. And they came thither into the midst of the house, as though they would have fetched wheat, and they smote him under the fifth rib. And Rechab and Baanah his brother escaped. For when they came into the house, he lay on his bed in his bedchamber, and they smote him, and slew him, and beheaded him, and took his head, and gat them away through the plain all night. And they brought the head of Ishbosheth unto David to Hebron, and said to the king, Behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, thine enemy, which sought thy life. And the Lord hath avenged my lord the king this day of Saul, and of his seed. And David answered Rechab and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said unto them, As the Lord liveth, who hath redeemed my soul out of all adversity. When one told me, saying, Behold, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good tidings, I took hold of him and slew him in Ziklag. Who thought that I would have given him a reward for his tidings? How much more, when wicked men have slain a righteous person in his own house upon his bed, shall I not therefore now require his blood of your hand, and take you away from the earth? And David commanded his young men, and they slew him, and cut off their hands and their feet, and hanged them up over the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth, and buried it in the sepulchre of Abner in Hebron. In the previous chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 3, David has 6 children with 3 wives, 1 princess, and 2 other women. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, accuses Abner of indulging in a sexual encounter with Saul's concubine. This angers Abner, so he uses his political connections to agree that David will become king. Joab kills Abner to avenge his brother Asahel. David mourns Abner. The current chapter that we're on, 2 Samuel 4, 2 of Saul's employees behead King Ishbosheth as he is sleeping. They bring his head to David, expecting a reward. Instead, David has them both killed. David buries Ishbosheth's head with Abner. Summarizing 2 Samuel chapter 4. In verses 1 through 3, Saul's son, Ishbosheth, he heard that Abner, the war captain, was dead. So Abner was Saul's advisor. So Saul is now dead. Abner is now dead. And Ishbosheth lost his courage. That's what it means by hands were feeble. He's began to get scared. Also, all of Israel was fearful, troubled. It says that Saul had 2 men that were captains, Baanah and Rechab. And it says the people that they were from were Beerothites, and they fled. So that's one chunk of the story. Then we get to verse 4, and this is a different piece of information. This is telling us that Jonathan, Saul's son, who's dead as well, Jonathan had a son, or Saul had a grandson, who couldn't walk. That's what lame of feet meant. Crippled, disabled. Okay. And in verse 4, it explains this person, what happened to them. So he's lame. He was 5 when the news of Saul and Jonathan's death came. So his nurse took him, dropped him, and he became crippled from that accident. And then it gives us his name, Mephibosheth. So then we get from verses 5 through 12, and the narrative shifts. back to the first two people, uh, Rechab and Baanah. So the sons, they went to Ishbosheth's house, Saul's son, who was the king of Israel, but his war captain Abner advised all the elders of Israel to agree that David should be king. So now Ishbosheth is just there. He's Saul's son, the king's son, but Israel is now has a different king. So these two men who are supposed to be working for Ishbosheth, they go to his house when he's sleeping and they stab him. And verse 7 and 8 goes into detail. They beheaded him and took his head. And they took the head to King David. And they said, hey, remember Saul was trying to take your life all those times. So now his son, Ishbosheth, we have his head for you. The Lord hath avenged my lord the king this day, which just want to point out in this chapter, God doesn't talk. So these people are assigning something to God again, saying, hey, the Lord has avenged you. See what we're able to do when God didn't even speak in this chapter. So just want to point out that people do things all the time in God's name, and God hasn't said a word. And for some reason, he doesn't just strike people down. Maybe we'll see it later, but just wanting to point that out. So when we see that in today's time, people doing things supposedly in God's name, and it doesn't line up with the Bible, well, it's always been that way, it seems. Okay. So then we get to verses 9 through 12. David explains that the last man who came thinking he was bringing good news because he killed Saul, David had him put to death too. He said, you killed an innocent man. So he commanded his men to kill these two men that killed the king's son. And he took the head of the king's son, Ishbosheth, and buried it with the war captain, Abner. That's all for 2 Samuel 4. I love you. Have a wonderful day.